I started my first martial arts class on the military base. Due to my dad's military career, we traveled about every 2 years. We were moving to a new military base. So whatever martial arts style was going on with the military guys in the base gym, that's what we got taught. So that was 51 years ago, and that's where it kind of framed up from there. So I've done everything from Taekwondo, Tung Sudo, Japanese jiu-jitsu. I've done a little bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu now, but a little bit of Aikido, just judo, whatever was going on in the base gym, that's what the lessons you got that day. Back in 06, 07, we got punched in the face. We did our first million in 2003, 04, 05, 06. I made that business change based upon the information I got. And then, of course, on top of that business change that I made, then the housing market crashed. And people were losing jobs and gas spiked and all these things were going on. It was a really punch in the face. So my wife and I sat back and said, okay, how are we going to structure the business to where we're never, ever in that situation again? So you've heard me talk about necessity-driven business models.
Yep.
So, and we're kind of in one right now. I don't think it's as severe as 2007 was, but we're definitely in one where everything is more expensive just to exist. So when a family is sitting down and they're looking at their budget, they got two columns. They got we have to have this. We can live without that. This is what I call the luxury. What is the necessity? What do we have to have every day for the family to exist? And so how do we put ourselves in a situation where we're always in the necessity column? And I think that's where after school and summer camp programs are a necessity-driven business model.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Seven Figure Secrets podcast. Jennifer Waters here with my co-host, Tommy Siegler. And today we have Mr. Gary Schill. Gary, thanks so much for being here today with us.
Well, thanks for having me. It's really an honor to be with you guys today.
Yeah, we're pumped. And, you've been in the martial arts industry and after school is your thing. We're going to dive into that in a little bit, but I'd love to really have you maybe introduce yourself to our audience, share a little bit about how you started and what you do now.
Yeah, so I started as a kid like most of us did. My dad was in the military. I was born in the Azores Islands. There was a small military base there and I was born there. And then we moved to Biloxi. From Biloxi, we moved to Oklahoma, and that's where I started my first martial arts class on the military base. Due to my dad's military career, we traveled about every 2 years. We were moving to a new military base. So whatever martial arts style was going on with the military guys in the base gym, that's what we got taught. So that was 51 years ago, and that's where it kind of framed up from there. So I've done everything from Taekwondo, Tung Sudo, Japanese jiu-jitsu. I've done a little bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu now, but a little bit of Aikido, just judo, whatever was going on in the base gym, that's what the lessons you got that day. Because a lot of times the military instructors, they were just moving in and out based upon what was going on.
Yeah.
So it was great because you got to get a little bit of a taste of everything. So that was the beautiful thing about it. In 1989, my instructor said to me, hey, we're going to start an after school program. And I'm like, we're going to start a daycare? And I'm like, no, it's after school program. And so that's kind of where the after school program got started for me and cutting my teeth. I think we actually started the first after school program in Texas in 1989.
Wow. That's really incredible. 1989. My dad started his school in 82. So you guys were kind of, right in that same spot. I'm sure things have evolved over the years as far as what after school looked like back then and what it looks like now. Have you evolved some of those practices, I would imagine, over the years?
We've evolved a lot of it. So even though my first instructor, we had an old Kenny shoe store. I don't remember those or not, but...
Oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah. And we had converted it into a martial arts school. So it was actually 2 rooms that were storage rooms that we actually did academics in, which was a good thing because a lot of kids just weren't getting, even back in the late 80s, early 90s, the kids weren't getting a lot of academic assistance because parents have to work. And so, you're getting the best of all 3 worlds. Now, we're a lot more strict about how we do, making sure we have every child accounted for and those kind of things. Back in the day, it was like, if you showed up, you showed up, you didn't, you didn't. And now we don't do that. I mean, we have a whole accountability process we use. We communicate with the schools, we communicate with the parents just to make sure that every kid's accounted for and we're not leaving any child at a school. And of course, we have accountability stuff for the drivers to make sure that no child is ever left on a vehicle. And thank God we've never had that happen to us. We've seen it happen to other people, and it literally will destroy a program in a heartbeat. And so we want to make sure that these kids are more accounted for. And the kids today are very different than they were even just 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I tell parents all the time that when I started the current after school program I have now full time in 2001, my kindergartners would come home with 25 spelling words a week. And we would really get into the academia and really helping them. So we were working on the physical, emotional, mental, and the academia all as a whole to make the children really rounded out. Kids don't come home with any homework anymore. So we've had to go to different resources to have things for the kids to do on the academic side during what we call our non-physical development side of the equation, because we can do all the martial arts stuff, which we do, but we need to make sure that we're rounding them out, making them confident, giving them those skill sets that they can be able to handle and be productive members of society later on. And I think that now a lot of these children are just soft. Parents are overbearing. What I call bulldozer parents, they just bulldoze any kind of adversity out of the way in front of their children. They don't let them suffer any kind of heartache or rejection or failure. And unfortunately, it doesn't build any kind of that stick-to-itiveness, that grit that you need, that all of us have. My mother says to me all the time, I'm so sorry I'm so tough on you when you were younger. And I'm like, I am so appreciative you were, because when you run through tough times as an adult, you don't crater, you don't give in. You just like, you know what? I'm going to get up, put my pants on, and we're going to get after it. And that's just the way you have to face it every day.
I think that you're right on track with a lot of that stuff. Like, I grew up on the mats. My dad had me, I don't even remember starting like karate. I have no memory of doing it. I just always did. And,
right.
I think that me being the sensei's daughter, it was 10 times harder for me than it was anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
But I love it. I'm an incredible martial artist because of it. And like, to your point, I've gone through some really challenging times in my life. And I think without having that perseverance, without having learned that as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, that would have been rough to go through some of those things. Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be super important. So we'll dig into some more of this. Dad, I'll turn it over to you. So I know you're eager to get into some questions.
Oh, yeah, I'm eager. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go back old school on you, Jennifer.
Oh, boy.
Garrett, when she was young and I taught classes and she was like 6 and 7 years old and she's out there helping me with some of the kids and stuff, and she would be doing something wrong and I would just say, get off my mat. And she would drop that lip and go. She would go into the next room in the office with her mom and crawl under the desk. We had kicking shields under there. She would go to sleep. So I was not easy on her at all.
I wasn't easy on my 5 either, because I never wanted the parents thinking, oh, it's the instructor's kids that always get away with that. I wanted it to be completely the opposite. So they never thought they were getting preferential treatment.
Yeah. So you got 5 kids. So first of all, I want to hear the age bracket that you have there. And then I understand they're all working in the martial arts school with you.
I have 2 still working in the academy. So my oldest is 43. My second child is 39. I have a 27-year-old. He's the second. All of them are at least second-degree black belts.
Cool.
That was the minimum standard in the house. And so the 27-year-old, he's a radiation therapist. He lives in Houston. I have my daughter. She's now a senior at Texas State, and she works my camps when she's home from university. And then I have a 17-year-old, and he works camps as well. It's required that they have to get in there. I think I hope I don't offend anybody, but I think it's actually the best form of birth control on the planet. Yeah. Small children, and be able to understand the responsibility. I mean, you have a child, what comes with it? It's not,
Yeah.
all rainbows and butterflies and all that stuff. There's a lot of responsibility that come with it. My 17-year-old took a few years off of training, and he just literally came back to training a couple months ago, and he actually has his first tournament this coming weekend. He was a national, still is a national soccer player where he traveled all over the country. I know his martial arts made a huge impact on his ability to be such an effective soccer player. His foot to eye coordination is insane because of all the kicking and stuff we've done over the years. So, but it's good to see him come back in the academy. He called me right before the podcast and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm gonna take an hour lunch today because I'm gonna actually help teach class tonight." And I'm like, that I'm so proud. But I'm like, okay, I really appreciate it. But inside, that dad side of me is like, finally coming back into the fold without having to, force it on them when they were younger. Yeah.
Yeah. That's family stories are always awesome. And I think that, I don't know, just from my, experience with dealing with a lot of different clients around the world, it seems to me that you either have the whole family's all in, or it's just like one owner and he's all in and the family has to be cheering him along. But it's very hard to have two different things happening where one spouse is totally against it, one spouse is totally in it, or family members. It just doesn't work. I don't know. What's your experience been on that?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny that, and I talked to my wife, I said, I want the kids to be fully able to protect themselves. I understand what the martial arts did for me. It saved my life. And I want the kids to have that foundation. Now, once they get the 2nd degree black belt, they can pursue other interests. And I will encourage that, and I'll pay for it and everything else. But the black belt has got to be the baseline. And there'll be times they're getting close to black belt, and I run a really old school black belt test. It's 2 days long. We start on Friday. We end on Sunday. I give them about 6-7 hours sleep over the weekend. I call it my mini SEALs hell weekend. Just really want them to understand, we're not getting a black belt just because we show up and we pay a tuition. I want them to be able to walk the walk and talk the talk, right? So, but the kids, when it would get tough, they would go to my wife and be like, "Mom, I'm not feeling so well today. Can I just skip class?" And she would always say, "I need to go talk to your dad." "Well, no, I'll just do class." And I understand. Now we joke about it. And now that they're older, right, and they understand, they see the benefit of what I was pushing them through, and they joke about it now. So they'll get up and they'll put on their uniforms from like 7 years ago. So the Dobok sleeves are all the way up to here, and they got really high waters on. They can barely get the belt on, and they'll be like Chewy, and they're doing forms and stuff in the thing, and we're all laughing about it because it was just. My classes were probably like you or Mr. Siegel. My classes were very strict. It was the old school guys coming back from Korea and Vietnam and how things were in the military side of the training. And that's all that I knew. So I had to modify that over the years because a lot of these kids today, if I trained them like I did 20 years ago, we wouldn't have any students anymore. I'd have the 1%ers, but the rest of them wouldn't be in the door. We had to change. We had to adapt to what was going on.
Yeah, we had to do a lot of adapting because, all my instructors throughout my martial arts career were former military. So you can imagine how fun that was. And so anyway, we had to adapt some things without giving up what we are actually trying to do, which was mold these kids into potential adults and give them and tell them and teach them that if they want something, they got to work hard for it.
100%. And having the parents on board with that is the greatest challenge. At least it is where we're at. And academy owners that I talk to, the parents are the biggest challenge we have right now is getting them on board. And that's one reason why years ago we incorporated a parents as coaches program with the onboarding process. So to help them I'm sorry?
I like that. We're going to steal that idea from you.
Yes, sir. You're more than welcome to, because anything that'll help these parents understand that everything starts at home, and the way they do things at home will help get them ready for life. And so you talk about, I know you guys have probably read Think and Grow Rich and talk about beginning with the end in mind. And we don't do that when we're raising children. Heck, when we have our first child, it's all fly by seat of the pants, right? Just throw it against the wall. Did that work or didn't work? And the second and third one comes along, and the fourth one and fifth one, for me, it's like if they fall down and they're bleeding, it's like, is there blood squirting out? Is there a bone sticking out of the skin? Let's go, right? Yeah, it was a great fall, man. But with the first one, we're like, oh my God, right? And so we have to teach the parents not to get overexcited about when they are having those times of challenge. Because there's times when we're pushing the kids to get over that hump. And then once they get there, it's like, man, that was so awesome. Because I want them focusing on the win, not focusing on, I'm not good enough. I fail, right? And so it's such a hard measure. And then you get the kids coming off the mat, and you have what I call the little league baseball parent that thinks they have a bleacher black belt and they've been studying for 150 years and they know everything, to the dichotomy end of it, to the parent of, I think 10 push-ups was a bit excessive. So it's just like, are you kidding me? 10 push-ups excessive? So it just adding that dichotomy and having to mold them where we need them to be at and teach them, we have a saying that, when they're on the blue, they don't belong to you. Meaning that's the color of the mats we used to have. When they're on the mat, only thing I want you saying to them is something positive. And if the only thing they did good that day was they picked their nose really good, then you say, that was the best nose picking I've ever seen. But they can't get down constructive criticism coming off the mat. That has to come from the instructors. You be the good cop, let us be the bad cop, and let us use. And I know you guys probably use the same system, PCP, praise, correct, praise. We're going to give praise, we're going to give correction, we're going to give praise, let's move on, let's go. And so we use that system, and it does really work, but teaching the parents how to do it, because too many parents think that someone else is paying attention to their child, and when their child makes a mistake, it's a reflection on them. And it's not. It's just their child learning and growing and not getting involved in how you think it makes you look as a parent.
Yeah.
Taking their ego out of it.
Yeah. And that's so true. And I think that a lot of the feedback I get from school owners when they watch this podcast, whether they're clients of ours inside of Seven Figure Dojo or probably clients of yours in Seven Figure Success. Yeah. I think a lot of school owners start where we are talking about right now. We want it with the good, we want to be able to help these kids, but then they find challenges trying to scale. A lot of people start part-time. I know that Dad was that way. The school was a part-time school. You were as well. And then, we made the leap to full-time, but then had to bump back down to part-time because that was our struggle. Were business systems back in the day. We just didn't have the business systems to transition and to really focus on being able to grow. So for you, when you transitioned from part-time to full-time, what were some of the hardest things for you making that transition to a full-time school owner?
Wow. I wish we had about 4 or 5 hours to go into just this segment, right? I think the biggest thing for me is that where we were at, there was only one other martial arts school in the entire area. So when we were in our church from 97 to 2001, we had probably 50, 60 students. So I didn't transition with zero baseline. I had a good, decent baseline.
Yeah.
We added in the after school. But what I was not expecting was how fast we grew in that first year. I mean, we went to 250, 300 students like that.
Yeah.
And the problem is that if you don't have the proper systems and processes in place, then your attrition rate's higher. Onboarding is non-existent. You're flying by the seat of your pants. Kids get lost in the cracks. There's all these different things. So I think the biggest thing, sales and marketing is all I did from the time that I was younger, because I started selling Kirby vacuum cleaners door to door at age 14.
Wow.
I understood that process, right?
Yeah.
And it was all of the back end processes, the operations, those type of things that I wasn't really versed in. That really, it didn't hurt us because there were so many kids enrolling. We did not pay attention to the attrition rate until 2007.
The recession.
Oh, well, the housing market crashed.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right.
Second studio in 2000. All these things cascaded, right? And we learned our best lesson. And I actually had hired one of the top leading industry experts at that time. And then he and I were talking. He said, look, your profit margin on your after school is only X. We're going to eliminate it and all these things. Well, and one of the things that I talk about with my coaching side is that we talk about necessity-driven business models compared to luxury-driven business models. And so we learned really quick. We took our after-school program from 110 kids down to 16, and we learned really quick it was one of the biggest mistakes that we ever made. Yeah, I'll get into that a little bit later on when we cover some of the business side of things. But just systems and processes and understanding how those things are so important. And it actually, my wife and I designed what we call our 7 key metrics. And it tells us at every phase, if one of those metrics gets skewed, there's a problem in that area. And it allows us to go in and dissect either somebody's not following a script, somebody's not answering the phone properly, they're not a follow-up system. Like we had a salesperson get mad at us 5 years ago, and he actually went in and deleted in our CRM, he deleted our follow-up sequence.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I always keep redundant systems just in case a system crashes. And I was able to catch it really fast because one of my parents said, you know, you said you're going to be giving me emails after each of my first 8 classes. And I haven't gotten any of those yet. I get the phone calls and I get the mat chats, but I'm not getting the emails. And I'm like, what do you mean you're not getting the emails? So I went in and checked it. And sure enough, the whole system had been deleted. Now I'd fired the person, but right before he had left, he'd done it. So that's another thing to learn about is that when you're going to fire somebody, you want to make sure that you're walking them immediately, not giving them an opportunity to touch anything inside of your systems and processes to mess it up.
Yeah. We've had to learn that lesson over the years too. I think they're all business lessons as far as that goes. I think that, you know, you mentioned you made that transition, that leap with a base of like 50 to 60. Do you feel that that's really important for people that are trying to move from part-time to full-time, that they have some sort of base before they take a leap? Or is somebody just like, nope, quit my job, I've got 3 months cash saved up, I'm going to make it or break it? Because there's 2 different viewpoints on that, right?
There is. So I think that if they have a solid base and a solid business plan and they stick to the plan and they understand, and this is one of the biggest things I have with my younger kids that you work for me today. Well, I want to have a good work-life balance. That sounds great in theory.
You're
but
right.
when you start a business, there is no work-life balance.
Correct.
You know, I started when I went full-time, I would leave the academy at 1 o'clock because I was having to put all the contracts in, having to do all the stuff, make sure that, you know, whatever marketing was done. And then I'd be back up at 5 o'clock and at the academy by 6. So I was having to do all these things. And I think that, for me, it was kind of tough because at the time I was working for a software company. I was making over $250,000 a year when I left. And to go from that down to, you know, when your school gets kicking up and you're having to do, and I didn't understand about, you know, how to set up a proper lease. I didn't understand about tenant improvement money that I never asked for. So I paid for the entire build out of the school out of my own pocket. You know, you just don't understand those things when you're first starting out. So I think that if you're going to go part-time to full-time, you have to make sure that whether you're going to do it just, pardon my French, balls out, you're just going to go, that you better have a good business plan in place. You better have the right coaches in place that have already made every mistake you're about ready to make, that so you don't make them. And have it, if you can get a base, great. But understand that, you know, most martial artists, they think that they're competing with other martial arts schools.
Yeah.
We're not. We're competing with the traditional sports that parents feel are more important than martial arts. Baseball, football, basketball. Now it's soccer. Now it's lacrosse, volleyball. You know, so you're talking about the big 6.
Band.
And I'm sorry?
Band. Being in band.
Oh, yes. Band is huge now compared to what it was when I was in band in school. Yeah. You know, so they think that, and what parents are thinking is, I've got a chance to get my kid a scholarship.
Yep.
Right? But only 2% really get scholarships to begin with, instead of putting the other key components in place that will help them be a successful adult, which martial arts, a good martial arts school, brings to the table. And I think they totally miss that. And martial artists, a proper martial arts school and martial arts training are going to make them better at all the sports and including band, because time and rhythm and all those things and band have great correlation from martial arts over to band, so I think that parents miss that. So just, would you going to go part-time to full-time? I applaud you, but you need to make sure that you have a proper business plan in place, and don't do it like I did it. I got lucky. I'll be honest, because there was only one other school and I just said, I'm going to do it. And I did it. And woo, there were so many mistakes that had I done it in today's dollars.
Yeah.
You can't build out a school today for $150,000, a proper build out.
Yeah.
Right. You just can't. And big long-term lease. And you've got to have, all the deposits and first, last, and all this different thing. You're talking about a significant investment to get a school off the ground. And that's one reason why you see a lot of these schools today that are opening up that are less than 1,000 square feet. Well, you can't even do a form if you still do forms without you do a block and you do a punch. And I got to skip back and then I got to do 2 more punches before I'm going to the next set, right? There's just not enough room inside of the academy to properly train and you can get movement in, but you don't get the same kind of things. I mean, we're blessed. I've got 9,000 square feet. We're moving into a 26,000 square foot facility in December.
Wow.
And then we're building one over the next year and a half that'll be roughly 26,000 square feet. So it's just, we're blessed in that regards, but I could not have done that today like I did back in 2001 when we went from part-time to full-time. Wow. Not with the same budget, for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. So you've been crushing it. I mean, you've been crushing it for years. You got 3 things going on for you. You have a fantastic martial arts program. You have an after-school program. And you have your summer program going on. What kind of principles and things that you go by, and what has gotten you to that level of success? And on top of that, how do you stay there?
So I think that for me, and my faith is a big part of who I am. That's a huge piece of who I am at the core, in my base, right? Yeah. And I try to live my principles and guide my principles for my staff and my students with that same core principle. I think the other thing too is that I'm always looking, and this is a big mistake that I made a long time ago, because again, nobody sits down with martial arts school owners or basketball or gym or soccer and says, look, guys, you're not looking at your exit strategy. Your exit strategy may be 30 years down the road, but if you are not looking at your exit strategy, and again, I didn't learn about the EBITDA formula or beat the formula, whatever way you want to pronounce it. I didn't learn about that until much later on. Had I known about that earlier on, that I would have structured things much differently to make sure that we were getting a better understanding about how that formula plays into your exit strategy. Mm-hmm. With that, in case somebody on the podcast has ever heard of that before, an EBITDA formula is banks or anybody's looking at what the profitability of your company is, what your loan to value is, what your sell value is. And what most people don't understand is that in our industry, in the martial arts or any kind of recurring revenue model industry, you typically have a 7x EBITDA formula. So just to kind of make it a round thing, if you had $1 million valuation, you have a $7 million sale price that you can do on a recurring revenue model, where a standard brick and mortar business may have 2 to 2.5x. So it's a significant increase over that setup. And I wish somebody would have taught me that a long time ago, because everything that I've done since that point in time of learning that has all been about what is my exit strategy out of my company and how am I, because for most business owners, we take the money and put it right back in the business again to grow, whether it's marketing, whether it's buying equipment, whether it's investing in vehicles like I've got, or real estate or whatever it is, that money's going right back into the company to grow. Well, how are you going to get that money out at the end of it? Now, again, it may be 30, 40 years down the road, but how are you going to get the money out of it? How are you going to shelter it and protect it so that, God forbid, if I die tomorrow, what happens? Is it set up properly? And I think the biggest thing for me is that when I'm teaching my young instructors, it's like, guys, what if God takes me tomorrow? Nothing I can do about it, but do I have you guys set up properly to take this business over seamlessly? Once the party's over, Master Schill's gone, how are we moving forward, right? And if we don't do that right, and I think what motivates me is to really see them grow, because a lot of them don't come up with any business training. I did not. And I actually worked for a billionaire in my first 2 years of college.
Well,
And I gleaned knowledge, but I didn't fully understand the knowledge base sitting right in front of me. And I was exposed to some very wealthy, very successful people. But again, when you're 18, 19, 20 years of age, you're thinking like, I just got to do it on my own. I got to get out there and make my own mark. And when I put together my peak performers program, that's leadership program, I call it peak performers. When I put together my peak performers program, you want to talk about knowledge being given to you and you not seizing the knowledge when you have it. So I called my mentor, his guy name is Red McCombs. Have you ever heard of the McCombs School of Business down at the University of Texas? So that's Red McCombs. So I worked for him and his wife, Charlene, at their house. When I first worked for him, the very first Christmas, he gave me a book. So when I was putting together my peak performers program, I called him and said, hey, Mr. McCombs, you grew up poor, I grew up poor. I'm building this program for kids because I really want them to understand what they need to have to be successful as an adult. And he said, okay, so what did you do to change the narrative? And he said, son, I gave you a book when you came to work for me. Yes, sir. He said, well, did you read it? Well, sir, I got to the first couple of chapters. He goes, you're a dumbass. Go back and read the book. He goes, do you still have it? I said, yes, sir. I still have the copy you gave me. Go read the book. Think and Grow Rich.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking 16 years from the time that he gave it to me to the time that I really sat down and I really started studying it. And then it just broadened my horizon to other books from Jim Rohn, Robert Kiyosaki, just anything you could think of, right? And just really expanding my business information. So I had to treat my business knowledge and how I was growing there like I was a white belt to a yellow belt to an orange belt and really getting into a master's level of business understanding. And I'm not done because now I'm branching off into real estate and finance and those kind of things. And that's a whole nother white belt, yellow belt, orange belt education that I'm working on right now. But it's so exciting to have that going. So for me, to answer your question, is that it's the things that I want to pass on and the legacy that I want to leave, not about me, but of making them more successful. That's my goal. I want you guys to be more successful than I am at a much faster pace. And so that I know that I impacted lives and I did it right. I mean, I get it perfect. I screw up all the time, but I know that I did it right and I at least showed the path. And that's up to them to pick up the torch and take it from there and pass it along to the next generation.
Wow, that's awesome. You know what failure is? Failure is footsteps to the future.
Yes, sir.
But it's in that's some of the things I've learned. I'm a coach, trainer, and speaker for John Maxwell's team.
Oh, yes, good guy.
And so I do a lot of leadership stuff too. But that you're just rocking and rolling. So that's all.
Brian, we try every day, and we have to keep pivoting to keep up with the changes as fast as they're happening with the environment we're living in, for sure.
Speaking of pivots, 4 years ago, the whole entire martial arts industry and the world took a huge pivot with COVID, with 2020, with all the things going on. So absolutely saw people just devastated. Businesses shut down. People that we were doing very successful brought to shambles. I mean, we had to go through a ton of pivots in our business, but I'm just curious, like, what did you guys have to go through? How'd you get through it? And what are you doing now to continue to help? I'm still helping people. Like, we're still doing this, helping them recover 4 years later from it. So yeah, like, talk to us about that.
Yeah, so back in '06, '07, we got punched in the face. We did our first million in 2003, '04, '05, '06. I made that business change based upon the information I got. And then, of course, on top of that business change that I made, then the housing market crashed and people were losing jobs and gas spiked and all these things were going on. It was a really punch in the face. So my wife and I sat back and said, okay, how are we going to structure the business to where we're never, ever in that situation again? So you've heard me talk about necessity-driven business models.
Yeah.
So, and we're kind of in one right now. I don't think it's as severe as 2007 was, but we're definitely in one where everything is more expensive just to exist. So when a family is sitting down and they're looking at their budget, they got two columns. They got we have to have this. We can live without that. This is what I call the luxury. What is the necessity? What do we have to have every day for the family to exist? And so how do we put ourselves in a situation where we're always in the necessity column? And I think that's where after school and summer camp programs are a necessity-driven business model. On top of that, today, in the last 6 months, you've seen a lot of employers are being forced, they're telling their employees that they have to get back to work. Now, where we're located at, Dell Computers, their big headquarters, is probably about 8 or 9 miles from me. Now, the city they live in, or the city they're housed in, is a city called Round Rock. And a lot of when these big corporations come in, they get tax abatements because they're bringing so many people in the area that they're literally funding restaurants and shopping and convenience stores and all that tax base is moving in there, right? Well, Dell was literally told by the city of Round Rock, if you do not get your employees back to work, we're taking all of your tax abatements away. Whoa. Because all the businesses that are around you guys are going out of business because your employees are not at work. The second thing that's happened because of that is the unit cohesiveness inside of these companies is falling apart. They don't have that same working relationship, and you can't do it over Zoom. You can't get in and work with somebody and build something. So back when we looked at 07, 08, and what was going on there, my wife and I put together these 7 metrics, and how are we going to close the back door? Because for that short period of time in there, getting students to come in the door because of the economic situation was tough. So how are we going to get them in the door? And how are we going to close that back door where we kept them and we weren't going to lose it? And so we put together these 7 metrics. We put our onboarding system and we put in our retention system. And it really made a huge difference. So now let's fast forward. 2019, you start hearing scuttlebutts about a virus going on over in China. And luckily enough, I've got friends in the military, and they were telling me about, hey, there's some nasty stuff going on. We don't know what's going to happen. I got friends in the bioweapons division. They're like, we're being invited to go over to China to go look at some stuff. And so we went to the county judge right in January when that chatter started ticking up even more. And I just said, hey, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if it's even going to happen, but I want to get classified as essential because I've got firefighters and police officers, and I have construction workers, and I've got all these businesses that I know that if things are shut down, those businesses won't get shut down. And so they wrote us a letter saying, you're exempt from any shutdowns. That was the first thing we did. The second thing we did is that right when spring break was happening, because for us in Texas, they literally shut schools down the last Friday of spring break before schools are going to go back that next Monday.
Yeah.
So I sat down with my wife and we said, okay, we're going to hold free academic camps because the kids are going to Zoom online. We're going to hold free academic camps for any of the kids that are in the after school program so we don't lose the revenue. And so we didn't lose any revenue during that time. In fact, what happened is we had families calling us saying, I have to go to work. And I'm like, okay, well, you can bring them in. We're doing Zoom. Please understand this is how we run things. They'll be doing martial arts. They'll be doing physical activities along with it. You know, it's $250 a week. And they're like, we'll pay $400. And I'm like, $250's fine. Right. So we had 40 kids from the outside. We had our own kids from the inside. And so we never lost any of that set. Where we lost kids, and all of us did at some point in time. Yeah. Where we lost kids, and we went to online classes for 1 month, and I'm like, we're done. We are done with this. We're not doing it anymore. And I told my parents, you have to make a decision. We're not giving into this. I've studied it, and I'm lucky. I have 3 doctors in the family. I've got 9 nurses, 2 epidemiologists, respiratory therapists. We've got the medical field really covered. And they're all looking at me going, right? It's a virus, right?
Yeah.
And so I just told the kids, come back. You're going to wash your hands. We're going to do, just basic hygiene stuff. And we didn't wear masks either, because I'm like, you can't breathe in a mask and get proper O2, and then you're rebreathing your carbon dioxide, and it causes problems, lightheadedness and all these different things. And so we just flourished. And I mean, at that point in time, I did something. My wife was like, she looked at me like I had lost my ever-loving mind. I said, honey, I'm going to double the marketing budget. We're going all in. She looked at me. She's like, you're going to do what? And I said, we're going all in. I had social media posts going up 4 times a day with my team. We were like, push both throttles down. Let's go. Because what is everybody else going to do when it gets tough?
Pulling back.
Pull back. And I said, we're going to be in front of everybody. I couldn't go in the community. They're like, man, Gary, dude, you're following me everywhere on social media. I'm like, good, I'm in front of you. Right. And then soon as 2020, we did summer camps in 2020. They were good. But when 2021 summer camps came around, oh my gosh, we always had great summer camps, but I had waiting lists 30 and 40 deep. Yeah. I had people calling me saying, look, I know you're charging X. I'll double it if you'll bump my kid to the front of the line. Can't do that. Why not? Double the money. I said, it's about ethics.
Exactly.
And it's about morals and integrity. I'm not doing that. I had parents calling me in like May, be like, Master Gchill, I'm ready to sign my kid up for summer camp. I'm like, that's going to be a problem. Why is that? Because we already have a waiting list 30, 35, 40 deep. Well, I thought you were just joking on the marketing about you guys had a waiting list. I'm like, no, I wasn't. Right? And so that's how we really survived and really grew during that time. Even my coaching, and that's one reason why I started my coaching program. I watched all of this go on during COVID. I watched so many school owners get absolutely obliterated. Schools that had literally done their build out, had opened on March 1st, March 15th, they're closed.
Mm-hmm.
Life savings gone.
Yeah.
And it was so heart-wrenching. And I had done private coaching one-on-one, but I had not done a group coaching. And that's one reason why I was so mad and so angry at, just watching this happen in our country. And we're not talking about being in a communist country. This is a USA.
Yeah.
How do we let ourselves get to that point? But I was trying to do everything we could to help families. And then you have people that, and I hate to say it, people can't get out of their own way sometimes. The old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Heck, we had them in the middle of the lake. We were emptying out their bucket, refilling it, giving it to them. They're like, yeah, I just can't do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is your family's livelihood. Mm-hmm. Dude, you got to fight right now. And and that was the biggest thing was just the defeatist. And for me as a martial artist, we were always taught, you never quit. It was one of our tenets, right? Never quit. And I saw so many, there were some that had legitimate reasons, like, governments in their state, or like the customers I had in Canada. Canada is worse than people.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't get around it. And we tried different things and different ways to do it. And they couldn't, their municipalities or their governments just wouldn't let them change that. So that's the biggest thing that we did. And I mean, it's paid massive dividends. We've been blessed. We did 1.6 something last year. We'll do about 1.8 this year. And then when we get in the new facility, I'll be able to triple camps, our after school, our in different offerings we have. Because for me, my business model is I'm going after any kid, regardless of what sport or activity they're in. Because if I can get them into my academy and I can work with them, I can teach them about respect and courtesy. I can give them confidence and self-esteem, make them walk a little taller and be a little prouder. And then when we put them out into the world, you know, and when I'm in a retirement home someplace, I'm not having to go like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Right? Because that's what we're looking at right now. We have so many kids that just don't want to work. They lack confidence and self-esteem, and parents are lost. They don't know what to do about building that inside of their child. And if we can help them do that, and that's one reason why with the after school program, I get 3 hours a day with most of these kids. And we have structured curriculum that is really feeding a lot of the things that I wish that I would have learned growing up. The next thing we're implementing this year is an actual finance lesson each day.
Mhm.
How about just balancing a checkbook, understanding about compound interest and the rule of 72, and understanding all of these little bitty things that they could, if I'd have known that when I was growing up, I sure would have tossed money out the door buying stupid things I didn't need for a car, or taking a girl on a date, or, you know, whatever it was. I would have been investing more in my future, if that makes any sense. But
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, Dad, I don't know if you want to follow that one up, but I mean, I think that you mentioned just a moment ago, you know, that you started your 7-figure success at that time in 2020. I don't know if it was the same with you as it was with us, but we had school owners reaching out to us asking, what are you doing? How are you staying in business? And to be honest, like, that's when we took on I think we had like 10 people we just did small private coaching with. And then from there, it just grew. So, I mean, tell us a little bit more about, how you started working with people, and what are the things that you do inside of your coaching to help them with the necessity-driven business model that you were talking about.
So for me, I primarily focus on, now, don't get me wrong, they still get the same business systems, and they're probably very similar to what you guys teach, from all the business systems from, sales, marketing, onboarding, retention, staff training, just all those things, right? But where I really focus with them on is how to never, ever be in a situation where the economy is going to affect their pocketbook and they have more control over it. By building after school and summer camp programs, and I know people in the industry are like, well, you only build those because you can't build a martial arts school. I'm still getting martial arts students, right? So in I think one of the biggest things is that helping them understand that during summertime, I think summer camps are one of the best lead generation tools on the planet, because they may never come to a martial arts school. They'll come to my camp. Once I get them in the camp and they realize, wow, martial arts is kind of fun.
Right.
And then they try it, and then now I could hook them into either my evening martial arts program, my after school program, whatever the case may be. So I have 300 kids this summer, right, that I get. Wow. The thing is that they're paying me to be there. I'm not paying them to bring them into the academy.
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of lead system, right? But now, and we've had it since the start, there's an entire process we're working with these children on transitioning them, whether it's martial arts, whether it's after school. We have 22 day camps a day, 22 day camps through the school year when schools are out, and we'll have day camps. And so if I have 20 kids a day, we charge $75 a day. That's $1,400 extra I'm bringing in. You take that $1,400, you multiply it times 22, that's another $30,000 we're bringing in. Yeah. On top of the fact that every touch that I get with them, no different than it takes, on average 7 times for somebody to actually enroll in a full-time program, right? Every multiple touch I get with them now leads into, it's just one greater opportunity for them to be not stuck, but just get into a year-round program where the kids are in after school and then summer camp, and after school and summer camp, and they're in our elevated training program, and all of these things. So what I'm teaching my coaching clients is to how to use summer camps and after school as necessity baseline income to build their evening programs. And I've got people in soccer, basketball, STEM programs, volleyball. We do and martial arts as well. but we do multiple programs because we're all dealing with one common element. Kids.
Yeah.
Great school kids, regardless of whatever it is that they're working on. So and we're working with them on analyzing their systems and processes. You want to know why? It's like, and you've heard it too, Jennifer. You've heard people like, I can get you 100 new students in a month.
Yes. Well, you can. They probably can keep them.
What are you going to do with them?
Yeah.
If they do that, onboarding, number one, to get them on the mat, what are you going to do to retain them? And are you overloading your class so much that it disrupts the instruction cycle and your instructors are looking at you like, what did you just do to us? So these systems have to be built the right way so that you are, and the kids today, like when we started this program full-time in 2001, my kids' classes, my 4 and 5 and 6-year-old kids' classes were 90 minutes long.
Wow, that's a long time.
That's amazing. You can't keep kids attention for 30 minutes now.
Exactly, right? So now what we've done is we've built what we call our fundamentals class. It used to be our tiny dragons class, 3 to 4-year-olds. I'm not even letting 3 and 4-year-olds in the school anymore. Because they're not in a place maturity-wise post-COVID to be able to handle it. So we have our fundamentals class. They'll stay in that class. It could be a week, could be 3 months, just depending on how long it's going to take that child to be able to get into a 40, 45-minute class and be able to hang. Because a lot of them don't work out. They sit on the couch, playing video games all the time, their attention span, and I tell my coaching clients, if you want to know the attention span of a child, watch Saturday morning cartoons, because they've already done the research and they already know exactly how long they can have a TV show on before they go to commercial, because they know that's how long that child's attention span is. So you have to break it down. We used to be on a 6-minute time cycle inside a class. We do a 6-minute lesson, a 1-minute break, 6-minute lesson. Now we're down to like a 3-minute lesson because they're like, beige. I think I'll paint the ceiling beige. They're not in their spot or whatever the case may be. So helping them get their attention span, because once we get their attention span on point and we get it longer, then I can put them in longer classes and they're really getting the benefit out of the class, and they're not slowing down the kids that are at a different maturity point from where they're at.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's good. That's really good. Now let's change gears just a little bit. This is the question of the podcast. This is the question that everybody wants to know the answer to. Why do you think so many school owners never actually make money teaching martial arts? And this is taboo.
Well, I'll lay it out for you. So we have both traditional combatives and jiu-jitsu in my academy. And I've coached with many jiu-jitsu guys. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest things, I think jiu-jitsu is an amazing art. But for the majority of jiu-jitsu people, they're about 20 years behind where their traditional martial arts are in the business realm.
I'll agree.
And even my old instructor, he would come down and this is, early 2000s, and we were already charging $200 a month back then. And he'd be like, you charge too much. What do you mean I charge too much? Right? It's like, sir, you make $3 million a year off all the schools having to pay you for testing fees.
Yeah.
Why are you giving me flack about what I'm charging? Right? And he said, well, it needs to be for the people. It needs to be cheap enough that everybody can afford it. And one thing I learned is that I don't want everybody in the academy.
Yeah.
Right.
There are shit disturbers in the world that are in that lower price point. That, you remember the old Groupon days?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Oh, what a disaster, right? And so I think that, one reason why is that, one, they don't get adequate coaching. They don't treat their business knowledge like they treat their skill knowledge.
Right.
Second thing is they have this mentality they were raised with or taught that I have to be the cheapest in the area. No, you don't. because it's like if I go out and I buy now you can't really use them anymore like you could, 15 years ago. But if I go out and I buy a Hyundai, right, and I go out and buy a Mercedes, my expectations for those two vehicles is completely different. Now, Hyundai's in a very different market now. They're a very good car now. But if I go out and buy something cheap, then I'm going to have a cheap mentality about it.
Yeah.
If I go out and I invest in something that is better, people are going to clean the car more. They're going to take care of it better. They're going to do maintenance on it because they have a greater investment in it. So if they're coming to our academies, and we still have academies around this area, in my area, and I'm in the Austin area, and it's not cheap to live here, and we still have people charging $129, $149, $159 a month.
Right.
And my baseline entry on my martial arts side is $59 a week. I moved to a weekly billing model years ago.
Yeah.
So I was already doing it after school and summer camp. Why not do it with my martial arts, right? And my upgraded program, my peak performance program, is $89 a week. But my after school program, we do all-inclusive models. I don't do an a la carte model. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make is they want to make it all-inclusive. I'll share this nugget with your podcast followers. When you do an after school program or a summer camp program, especially after school, there's 22 day camps on average throughout the nation, right?
Yeah.
The kids will be out of school and the parents have got to figure something out to do with their kids. Well, if I had, we run about 120, 125 kids in our after school program. And inevitably, every day camp, I'll have 60 of them, 65 of them not show up for day camp. Now, if I ran an a la carte model, I would not book that 60 to 65 kids on that dollar amount. But by running an all-inclusive program, I'm collecting that revenue whether they show up or not.
Right.
So my after-school program, the monthly for them is $680 a month. So it's very different than, say, my $59 a week model for my martial arts, which is starting out about $260. When I'm at $680 and I've got 120 of those, right? That's a very different financial model on where things are at. I have to triple this almost to get to this.
Yeah.
But I still have martial arts students. They're still training. They're still going through the curriculum. They're still to do everything. I just get more time with them. So I get to have a greater impact on their lives than just a 45, 50-minute, 1-hour class 2 days a week. I get them every day. I get to imprint upon them expectations and manners and courtesy and independence and all the things that, we want to do. And that's really, if you talk to most martial artists, that's really what we want to do. We want to positively impact these children's lives so that they have a greater starting point than we had when we were leaving high school. Well, I think that the biggest reason why, Tommy, that most school owners don't is that they don't understand business. They think they need to be the cheapest, and they refuse. And I know, Jennifer, you have this too. People will call you all the time. Hey, can you give me some advice on this?
Oh, yeah.
Right? Hey, what did you do for scheduling your summer camp field trips? Well, it's in my blueprint. Do you want to invest in the blueprint? No. I just want to. It's like, and I'm not trying to be greedy, but it's like I've spent hours and hours and hours putting things together like you have. And you've got some great stuff that you put together out there. Right? And we give away a lot of free stuff as well. But it's like, because I do a 5-day training, we call it our summer camp challenge or our after school challenge. I'll do a 5-day free training, and we give them a ton of information. But then it's like, no, I don't want to invest. Okay, then they'll hit you up and say, I'm just not getting it to go. Well, but you didn't invest in anything and learn, and then treat it like you're treating your martial arts knowledge, and build it, right?
Right.
And don't get me wrong, when I've tried to shortcut any kind of system, or try to find it out backhanded, or, well, I just need a couple pieces of it, right? And this one coach that I had, this is what made me really mad, is that I was coaching with him, and he had his own schools in an area of the country north. And I was sitting down with him one day, and I'm like, I'm seeing inside of your blueprint where you're giving us this knowledge, but I just got done talking to one of your academy owners, and there's like 4 or 5 more steps here. He goes, yeah, I don't give those steps out. I just leave those for my academy owners. And I'm like, what am I paying for? I'm paying for, I want to know all where this at, right? That'd be like you learning basic form number 1, or like, we're going to give you the first 6 steps, figure the rest out on your own, right? Or jiu-jitsu is like doing a belly pass. What do I do now, right? Coming out of guard, I'm going past the knee. And if you only get the first 2 steps, well, how do I do the rest? And I think that these academy owners, they're so worried about, I don't have the money. Well, you're not going to have the money if you don't invest in where it's at. Give up something, right? A lot of them are driving, really nice cars. Well, the car I have in the garage is 8 years old. I don't need, a brand new car. I have different goals on where I'm at. My education for my kids. And that's one thing I did for my children that I didn't have done for me, is I put them in front of the right people. My son wants to do real estate, and I'm doing the same thing, but I have guys that are in my mentor pool that I plugged him into them. You want to know about commercial real estate? You want to know about finance? You want to know about all these things? Go talk to these guys. I'm not that knowledgeable yet. I'm learning like you're learning, right? But if they think that's just the biggest thing they don't want to do, they don't think it's worth it, or they think they can figure it out on their own, and then they're in the same spot they were the year before, a year later.
Yeah.
Right. And then, of course, I did some statistics probably 3 or 4 months ago for a client of mine, and $1 million school revenue back in 2005, you'd have to do 1.56 million to have the same purchasing power today as you had back in 2005.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Right. Inflation, all the other things that are impacting it. Mm-hmm.
Even for like you and me, the name of our company is 7-figure, and 7-figure is important, right? But what's really more important, it didn't make any difference how big the number is you're bringing in the door.
Right.
What's your profit level?
Mm-hmm.
Are you running a 5% profit level? Are you running a 30% profit level? Because I've got a couple of coaching clients, they only run probably 750, 800,000 a year. But man, their profit level is on point. It is 40, 45%. And when you're getting 40, 45% profit level on 800 grand, you can live off $400,000 a year.
Yeah.
Easy. Right? Yeah. So that's just, I think that, Tommy, that's the biggest thing. They just won't invest in their business knowledge.
Yeah.
It hurts them.
Yeah, you're right. Because you gotta, and I see it, we both see it in coaching, because they spent all this time and all this money going to all these martial arts seminars, learning to be the best that they could possibly be in martial arts so that they could put it out there in front of people, but they don't know how. They won't learn a script. They won't learn how to work the front end or the back end. They don't want to learn how to do sales. If you can't sell something, you can't get anything.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that martial artists make, and I did it early in my career, is I felt like I had to be the best at throwing a roundhouse kick. I had to be the best at throwing a side kick. I had to be the best at doing throws, right? I had to be able to demonstrate that the best. 99% of the population that's starting out in martial arts, they wouldn't know a side kick from a front kick, from a roundhouse kick, inside, outside block. They wouldn't know, right? What they're looking for. And then again, they're not asking the right questions. They want to be like, yes, in my martial art, I can teach you this and I can blah, blah, blah. But it's like, that's not what the majority of parents are coming to you for.
No.
More effective. Yeah, they'll say, oh, but my style is the most effective. And actually, like, that is not what most parents care about at all.
And but with your dad and I mean, we're close to the same age. And I'm telling you, when we were being raised in the martial arts, especially when the Korean masters were coming over, you could never even think about going to train at another school on another side. You're a betrayer. I could never have you back in my school again. Even when like for me, when I was having to move from city to city or country to country, if I got an orange belt or a green belt or yellow belt in that style, then I'd move. The new master would say, nope, you start over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just the way that it was. So while their craft is important for them to understand, where that craft importance really comes into play is more when they get to that. For jiu-jitsu, it's going to be blue belt above.
Right.
For us, it's going to be red belt, brown belt, and above.
Yeah.
That's where that craft really comes into play, because you're not going to be teaching high-level stuff to a brand new white belt coming out of the door. Right now, we're just trying to get them to stand still, how to bow properly, how to focus, how to say yes, sir, and no, sir, yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, how to shake hands properly and look you in the eye. Because I can't put the roof on the house if I don't build the foundation first. And that's where we're really at. I think a lot of them, like you said, Tommy, they're focused on the wrong aspect of their business. They need to spread out. But they've got to develop the business systems. Otherwise, they're never going to create the freedom inside of their academy that is there.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be scraping by month after month after month.
For sure.
And then coming to us and saying, I really want to build it, but I don't want to spend any money. I love you, dude, and I respect the heck out of you as a martial artist. You're phenomenal. But you're not going to, it's the old adage about, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, it's not going to change anything.
Yeah, definition of insanity.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll spend money, but they don't want to spend money, but they need to invest money in themselves. That's a big deal.
Yeah, they'll spend money on the latest gi, the latest uniform, the latest sparring gear, all that stuff, but they won't. Heck, when I was growing up, when I came up, Century, a lot of these companies weren't around, so we didn't have sparring gear.
Yeah.
Right? And it definitely wasn't being mass produced. So if your sparring gear tore, we didn't even have black duct tape back then. We had the old gray duct tape that you would put around your boot, around your gloves, right? And then we didn't have mouthpieces that were molded for martial arts. We had to get the football mouthpiece and shave the chin strap off of there. And the cups were too big. My gosh, you look like you're walking around like you're bow-legged. So it's changed, but they have to invest in their future. And they gotta sit down and go, you know what? What do I want out of my school? What do I want for my family? Begin with the end in mind, and then reverse engineer that process. Because if they're not, they're never going to be out of the position they're in right now.
For sure. Well, Gary, this has been gold. I hope that people have really picked up on a ton of information here. You've shared a lot with us just about the thought processes behind building a business, and what you need to focus on when it comes down to whether you have a necessity-driven model or, like you said, a luxury-driven model, and just thinking about all those things. What's ahead for you? Like you mentioned building out other schools, like your business. Tell us a little bit about what do you feel is ahead in the future for you?
So we've got real estate that we're investing in. One of the biggest things I'm working on, there was a mentor of mine, and I apologize, I can't call his name off the top of my head. And this is probably about 15 years ago, he passed away. He was really working with martial arts school owners on how to help them be able to buy their own building and to do it the right way. So one of the things that I'm working on right now is I'm trying to really understand that whole knowledge process. And I really want to try to do some syndicate deals for the right martial arts school owners or academy owners of any genre, right? And how can they build their own building so that they have, legacy wealth beyond just what their craft is. Because when you set real estate up the right way and you let the business rent from you as where that trust is set up through on the business side of things, that's another form of income that you're bringing in. And if you decide, I want to retire, I'm done, you still own the building. If you don't own the building, you're literally leasing and giving the money to the owners all the time. And now leases are getting stupid, crazy expensive. And so the biggest thing that I'm working on over the next probably year, 18 months, 2 years, is I want to put together a system that would allow us to go in and help not just the business processes stuff of building your business, but giving them a path to building ownership and for the future, whether it's one location, multiple locations, and expanding their financial path model. So that you look at a spoke of a wheel, right? How many of those spokes are bringing in money into the center hub?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times people only have one path for cash. That's it. They don't have multiple financial streams of income coming in. So if one stream goes down, as we saw in COVID, when that one stream goes down, they have nothing to go back on. And so that's what is for me. We want to get this new facility built where we're at, and we're expanding into all the different sports besides just martial arts. So we'll have basketball and volleyball, soccer, martial arts. We'll have parkour. We'll have some different things that we'll have in one big location that the kids can all come to, because not all kids will want to do basketball and not all kids will want to do martial arts or parkour or whatever, but they'll want to do something. And if I can get them in the door and I can run them through our leadership program, what comes out on the other end is a way different kid than what came in the door. And that's where our goal is for where we're at.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Gary, thanks for being here again. Can you tell everybody, like, where could they go to find you if they, want more information, all that? Just share that with all our viewers.
Yeah, so they can go to sevenfigurebusinesssuccess.com. The best thing to do if you want to learn about after school and summer camp programs is you can go to After School Summer Camp Business on Facebook. It's a free Facebook page. They can get all kinds of information about after school and summer camp programs. We put up tidbits of training information on there that they can get as well. They can ask questions, things of that nature, so that, and there's a small community there. Sometimes they're active, sometimes they're not, but a lot of times they're only active when they're wanting information because now they're panicking. They tried to do something without investing, and now they're panicking, and that's okay. But it's just, that's where they can do that, and that's just the easiest way for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Gary, thanks again. Appreciate you being here, and we'll see you guys.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
It was an honor being with you guys.
Sweet. We'll see you guys next time on Seven Figure Secrets Podcast. Bye, everybody.